Dr. Mohammed Munir, lecturer in molecular virology at the University of Lancaster, joins us. So we've just laid out the sort of different plans. We're in Plan A. Do you think, looking at the figures, the case numbers, should we be moving to Plan B?
Well, if we look onto the number, Rosie, I think those are alarming. I mean, we are having more, at least double than Germany cases per million. We have triple than France and Portugal. So that number is really alarming. So that means the time to go into Plan B is now, if we want to avoid further surgence of these cases in the winter time, when it will be compounded by the influenza infection and indoor settings. So really it is the time, if we want to avoid anything happening beyond our capacity in winter, this is the time to apply Plan B.
But is this virus continuing to mutate?
Well, if we look on to the Delta variant, which is the latest variant of concerns, it has sort of stabilized because we haven't seen a major change into the Delta variants by itself, except two mutations have been introduced by natural evolution at position 222 and 145. Beside these two, which make a small lineage within the Delta variant that's called AY4.2. Beside this one, we haven't seen a major difference. And these two mutations is not going to make a drastic difference in already highly transmissible variant. So at this moment, of course, the chances for the virus to mutate will always remain there. But at this moment, I think important thing is to look on to how we can reduce the transmission, because the variants that we are dealing with are already very highly virulent and highly transmissible.
And we do know one of the key things that reduces transmission is, of course, having the vaccine. What is your evaluation of this sort of latter stage of the vaccine rollout where booster jabs, we've just seen that advert there from the government and from the NHS saying come and get it, but it seems like it's not happening as effectively or as efficiently as the first time round?
Rosie, this is the most critical point, because if we look on to the whole Europe, UK has only vaccine-led strategy to tackle this pandemic, which means that we have dropped all our other control measures to really emphasize the vaccine is the only way moving forward. We started with a great success. We were the leader in vaccination campaign in the beginning, but it fell through. We have now only 17% of the teenagers those being vaccinated, compared to, say, in Spain, where 70% of the teenagers are vaccinated. Our booster dose, half of only people are boosted. And one thing that I would like to highlight here is that why booster is so important is because we are having a waning immunity, which means the immune response is getting down, and over 6 months time it reduced to half, and that is the time when you are equally vulnerable to the infection as you were not vaccinated. So therefore it is very critical that you get your immunity up by the booster dose, and if not getting booster dose, particularly for 50 years older, where immune system doesn't react the way in younger ages or in adults at work, the person is very likely to catch the infection.
What do you say to people that really don't want to go through another round of restrictions, and they're citing the deaths per million figure, and also they say that because we're testing more, we're going to get a higher number of cases than other countries? What do you say to them?
No, I don't really agree. I think testing, the number of people you test doesn't matter, because if there is infection, it will be picked up. If there is no infection, number of testing wouldn't matter. But one important thing from this point onward is that we have to follow the Plan B now, because if we don't follow the Plan B now, this means we need to go straight into Plan C, which would be a lot more inconvenient, and nobody would like to go into a setting where we have been 2-3 times before in a long-term lockdown, which is not really in favor of society, not in favor of our economy and for our living being. So I think now the responsibilities lies on individuals, and more to do so onto the logistics, how we want to implement the control measure, and that include masking, that include ventilation, that include boosting very quickly enough that when we enter into the Christmas time, we have most of the booster doses administered, and also to amplify teenager vaccination, because that is where we are seeing highest level of transmission.
But it's also going to have to include compliance from the public. And, we did talk earlier, we don't actually know there is existence of this Plan C yet. Even for Plan B, there is going to be a significant amount of disquiet and people pretty upset if they're told again, work from home, you've got to wear a mask in public places. The government have got to balance looking after everybody's health, but not causing, other problems, disquiet, discontent, because people just say, we've had enough.
Absolutely, and I think that is really the important point, Rosie, is that if we look onto the overall sort of Western European perspective, I think UK has the least stringent COVID restrictions in place at the moment, and that is reason, of course, the number of cases are increasing, but that also means people got an impression that we are out of this pandemic, which is not really the reality. I mean, we are having, as we've been discussing, highest number of cases in any country per day, with that level of vaccine coverage. So I think the consistency in the response must be followed, and I was one of the first advocates where I say that the restrictions needed to be separated from the control measures, and many of the control measures that we lifted were not really the restrictions, so we should have followed those one ups. For example, masking should have not great impact onto a daily life, but it would significantly have impact onto the number of cases. So certainly consistency in the responses has to be very much maintained.
So Munir, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Dr. Mohammed Munir, a lecturer in virology at the University of Lancaster. He was making the point there, actually, that it's a very small imposition to wear a mask, but it can have big consequences. But for a lot of other people, it's the other way around. A lot of people feel that it's a massive affront to their freedom if they're asked to wear a mask, either by law or by, when you're entering a supermarket or something like that. So do let us know what you think about this morning and about whether you're worried about the